Hello viewers, welcome to Unacademy. Let's crack management exams. Unacademy is your one-stop shop to crack CAT exam. Unacademy is India's largest learning platform. In this session, we look at rudiments of quantitative aptitude. Before proceeding, let me very quickly introduce myself. I am Arjun R. Prasad, an engineer with 12 plus years of teaching experience. I have trained more than 6,000 CAT aspirants in the fields of quantitative aptitude, data interpretation, data sufficiency, and logical reasoning, as well as have helped them to crack the personal interviews. Have trained more than 4,000 students to crack the campus recruitment exams. Let us get started with today's topic, which is rudiments of quantitative aptitude. In the previous session, we saw the important trait to excel is reasoning. So, the very first question that we need to ask as far as the rudiments or basics of quantitative aptitude is concerned is what is mathematics or what is math? Some of us may think mathematics is study of numbers. Some others may think mathematics is all about playing with numbers, but not completely right. If we reason better, we would understand that mathematics is a language. How do we justify? Because it's a paradigm shift in the way that we are thinking. How do we justify that mathematics is a language? Let us take an example. But before that, let us understand why do we need a language? What purpose does a language serve? Language is needed to communicate. Now, if you go to a fruit shop and if you tell the vendor that I want 2 kilos of apples and 3 kilos of mangoes, what am I doing there? I am communicating with the help of what? With the help of mathematics. Therefore, what is mathematics? It's a language. When we say mathematics is a language, we need to understand basics of language. What is the most basic atomic unit of a language? The atomic unit means the unit which cannot be broken down further. If we reason, we understand that it's an alphabet. The next question, therefore, is what is an alphabet? You may say atomic unit of a language, but if we reason much more deep, we understand that alphabet is a symbol. Now you might have guessed the next question. What is a symbol? A symbol is a pictorial representation of a phonetic sound. When I make a sound, I need a way to represent it pictorially, and that is a symbol. Now a simple analogy question, let us look at it. Language is to alphabet as to mathematics is to what? Every language has its own set of alphabets. Mathematics being a language has its own set of alphabets. Mathematics is a special language, so its set of alphabets is also known by a special name, and that is numbers. Therefore, we will start by understanding numbers. If I take all the numbers in the world and ask you to classify these numbers into two disjoint sets where the intersection is null, the union gives me all the numbers. How would you classify the numbers as? Any thought? Maybe I'll just give you about 10 seconds. Some of you might have got it right. It can be classified as real and imaginary. Real numbers are those which can be represented on the number line. Because it is real, it can be represented on the number line. A number which cannot be represented on number line is imaginary. there is only one imaginary number, and that is I, whose value is root of -1. Further, let us see how we can classify real numbers. Again, any thought? We can classify real numbers as rational and irrational. What do you mean by rational numbers? For that, let us understand the meaning of rationality. Rationality means certainty, which means we know what comes next, or we know that this is the end and nothing comes next. Which means every number in the decimal form which is either terminating or recurring is said to be rational. In other words, a rational number is a real number which can be expressed in the form of p by q, where p and q are integers and q is not equal to 0. A real number which is not rational is irrational. All of us have used pi. Is pi a rational number or an irrational number? Some of us may think, whenever there is pi, I have replaced it with 22 by 7. 22 is an integer, 7 is an integer, 22 by 7 is rational, therefore pi is rational. That is wrong. 22 by 7 of course is rational, but pi is irrational. What is this conflict about? Pi is not equal to 22 by 7. Pi is approximately equal to 22 by 7. The actual value of pi is not known till date. Pi signifies the ratio of circumference of a circle to its diameter. So pi is irrational. Apart from pi, any other irrational numbers? We have lots of them. Root 2, 7th root of 11, 5th root of 13, 18th root of 19, 27th root of 23, nth root of any prime number where n is greater than 2 is said to be irrational. Such type of irrational numbers which are nth root of prime numbers are also called as surds. Surd is an irrational root of a rational number. Now let us come back to rational numbers. We can classify rational numbers further as integers and fractions. What are integers? Rational numbers in their simplest form, having the denominator as 1, are said to be integers. Every other rational number is a fraction. There are 3 types of fractions. What are they? Proper, improper, and mixed. Proper fraction is a fraction where numerator is less than denominator. 1 by 2 is a proper fraction. Improper fraction is a fraction where numerator is greater than the denominator. 3 by 2 is improper. Mixed fraction is an improper fraction which is expressed as an integer and a proper fraction. The same 3 by 2, when expressed as a mixed fraction, would be written as 1.5. In the next slide, we will look at integers. One way to classify integers would be to classify them as positive and negative. Hold on. When we classify as positive and negative, does the union give me all the integers? No. There is an integer which is neither positive nor negative. That is 0. 0 is neither positive nor negative. Let me take a small quiz question. Set of non-negative integers is also called as Some of you may say set of non-negative integers is positive integers, but wrong. Set of non-negative integers also includes 0. Therefore, set of non-negative integers is also called as whole numbers. Then set of positive integers is called as what? Natural numbers. Natural number starts with 1. Whole number starts with 0. In the next slide, let us look up whole numbers. One way to classify whole numbers is to classify as prime and composite. A similar question, is there any number that we have left out? Is there any whole number which is neither prime nor composite? Any thought? What about 1? 1 is neither prime nor composite. For that, we need to understand the definition of a prime number. In our school days, we might have learned a prime number is a number which is divisible by 1 and itself only. Going by that, 1 should have been prime because 1 is divisible by itself, 1 is divisible by 1 only. 1 is not divisible by any other number. But we stated that 1 is not prime. Why is it so? Because our understanding of the definition of a prime number is slightly wrong. A prime number is a number which has exactly 2 distinct factors. Then what is a composite number? A number which has more than 2 factors is said to be composite. Therefore, 1 is neither prime nor composite. Another way to classify whole numbers is to classify as odd and even. Now, any number which is neither odd nor even in the set of whole numbers. Some of you may say 0, but wrong. 0 is very much a even number. How is it so? For that, let us understand the definition of an even number. A number which is divisible by 2 is said to be even, which means when I divide the number by 2, the remainder must be 0. Then the number is said to be even. If there is some remainder, that means the number is said to be odd. Odd numbers are not divisible by 2. Now that we have understood the meaning of prime, composite, even and odd, a simple question. How many even primes are there? Take about 10 to 20 seconds. Think, and then I'll give you the answer. Some of you might have got it right. There is only one even prime, and that is 2. 2 is the only even prime, because other than 2, take any other even number, it will have 2 as one of its factors, thereby making that number a composite number. So 2 is the only even prime. Okay. Next slide, let us look at the concept of odd and even numbers. Let us look at this table. Odd plus odd is even. Odd plus even is odd. Even plus odd is odd. Even plus even is even. Let us look at what happens with respect to multiplication. Even number into an even number results in an even number because 2 is a factor of this even number, therefore 2 will be a factor of the product. Even into odd would result in an even number because 2 is a factor of this number, so 2 will be a factor of the product. Odd into odd is odd because 2 is neither a factor of this nor a factor of this, therefore 2 will not be a factor of the product. If you have understood this simple question, or rather questions, sum of an odd number of odd numbers results in what? Does it result in an even number or an odd number? Again, 5 seconds. You have. Some of you got it right. Sum of an odd number of odd numbers. Consider that there are 3 odd numbers. For example, odd plus odd is even. Even plus odd is odd. So sum of any odd number of odd numbers will always result in an odd number. It is very similar to a thought process where odd into odd is odd. The next question. Sum of an even number of odd numbers. Take 4 odd numbers. Odd plus odd is even. Even plus odd is odd. Odd plus odd is even. Sum of an even number of odd numbers will always be even. Very similar to even into odd is equal to even. Sum of any number of even numbers. Sum of any number of even numbers will always be an even number. Remember these concepts. These concepts are extremely important. Some questions have appeared in the competitive exams which are based only on this concept. We will look at a couple of questions in the next slides and one question in the last slide of the topic. Now a question. P, Q and R are odd integers while S and T are even integers. Sum of the product of every pair of these integers results in what? See, when we say sum of the product of every pair, first let us consider all the pairs. What are all the pairs? PQ, PR, PS, PT, QR, QS, QT, RS and RT. These are the 10 pairs. I'll repeat it. PQ, PR, PS, PT, QR, QS, QT, RS, RT, ST. These are the 10 pairs. Now, if I consider these 10 pairs, how many of these pairs, the product of how many of these pairs results in an odd number? P into Q will be odd. P into R is odd. Q into R is odd. Whereas anything into S will be even, anything into T will be even. Therefore, out of these 10 terms, we have 3 odd terms and 7 even terms. Sum of 3 odd numbers is an odd number, sum of 7 even numbers is an even number. So odd plus even is odd, and that is the answer. Sum will result in a odd number. Is that clear? Some of us may think of a way wherein we substitute some values. Let us say you substitute a value. I'll take P as 1, Q as 3, R as 5, S as 2, T as 4, and then compute. Because we are dealing with less number of integers, it's okay. If the question says 1000 distinct even numbers, we cannot go on writing all the way from 2, 4, 6 up to 2000. Therefore, understanding the concept and solving by using the concept is more important. Hope that is clear. Let us look at another question. Sum of 5 distinct prime numbers is 230. Which of the following is one of those 5 distinct prime numbers? Among the answer options, 11, 17, 13 and 2. Now, if we observe very carefully, we understand sum of 5 distinct prime numbers is 230. 230 is an even number. If sum of 5 numbers is giving me an even number, then one way to achieve that is to have all the 5 as even. But that is not possible because the 5 numbers are distinct primes. If I take 5 even primes, it is not possible for me to make them distinct because there is only one even prime number, which is 2. So, 5 even numbers is not possible. Okay, let us come to the next possibility. Can I consider 3 even numbers? No, that is also not possible. 1 even number and 4 odd numbers? Yes, that is possible. Is there any other possibility? No. Therefore, the only way to achieve a sum of 230, which is an even number, which is the sum of 5 distinct prime numbers, means one of those distinct primes has to be even and the remaining 4 have to be odd. Because one of those is even and it is prime, my answer to the question is 2. So my answer to the question, the correct answer is 2. Is that clear? Let us move on to the next concept, which is the concept of number line. A number line is a line which has no end. You take the point of origin, call it as 0. Anything to the right is positive and anything to the left is negative. Very simple. But we need to understand some subtle points with respect to number line. The entire range of the number line can be split into 4 significant intervals, which are the open interval from minus infinity up to minus 1, the open interval from minus 1 to 0, open interval from 0 to 1, and open interval from 1 to infinity. Out of these 4 intervals, the interval 1 to infinity is called as a normal range. Why do we call it as normal range? Because our common thought is for positive numbers, higher the power, higher the value. Take any positive number. Say for example, I take 2. What is 2 square? 4. What is 2 cube? 8. Which is greater? 2 cube. Higher the power, higher the value. This is true for any number between 1 and infinity, and that is why this range is called as normal range. The interval from 0 to 1 is called as a contrarian range because in this interval, higher the power, lower the value. For example, let us take half. What is half square? 1 by 4. What is half cube? 1 by 8. Which is greater? 1 by 4 is greater. So, higher the power, lower the value, or lower the power, higher the value. That is why the interval 0 to 1 is called as contrarian range. Similar distinction exists on the negative side, but with an additional constraint. The interval from minus infinity to minus 1 tells that higher the power, lower the value, which is our normal thought for negative numbers. Higher the power, lower the value. But please understand, this is true only with odd powers on both left hand side and right hand side. I cannot consider a even power because you take a negative number and raise it to a even power, it becomes positive. And the entire comparison goes for a toss. Therefore, this statement is true with a constraint only with odd powers. So the interval minus infinity to minus 1, higher the power, lower the value. For example, consider minus 2, consider minus 2 the whole cube, which is minus 8. Which is greater? Minus 2 is greater. Minus 2 is greater than minus 8 because minus 2 is to the right of minus 8. So a value to the right on the number line is said to be greater than the value to the left. Similarly, between minus 1 and 0, higher the power, higher the value. Again, because we are dealing with negative numbers here, this comes with a constraint only with odd powers. Between minus 1 and 0, take for example minus half and take minus half the whole cube, which is minus 1 by 8. Minus half is minus 0.5. Minus 1 by 8 is minus 0.125, which is greater. Minus 0.125 is greater. Therefore, higher the power, higher the value. Is this clear? Now, let's move on to an interesting concept, which is rules of divisibility. What is the rule of divisibility for 1? Every integer is divisible by 1. What is the rule of divisibility for 2? You may say, a very even number. The definition of even number is that it must be divisible by 2. If it is divisible by 2, we call it as even. But what is the rule of divisibility for 2? The rule of divisibility for 2 is the number must end with an even digit. The number must end with an even digit. Units place digit must be an even digit. What is the rule of divisibility for 3? Sum of the digits of the number must be a multiple of 3. Sum of the digits of the number must be a multiple of 3. For example, take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12,345. If you take the sum of the digits, 1 plus 2, 3, 3 plus 3, 6, 6 plus 4, 10, 10 plus 5, 15. 15 is a multiple of 3, therefore 12,345 is also a multiple of 3, or it is a number which is divisible by 3. Is that clear? Let's proceed. What is rule of divisibility for 4? The number formed by the last two digits of the number must be divisible by 4. Example, if this is the number 43218765432116, and if somebody asks, is this number divisible by 4? You don't have to divide the entire number by 4 and then check. Instead, look at the number formed by the last two digits, which is 16. This 16 is divisible by 4. Therefore, we say that the number is divisible by 4. The entire number is divisible by 4. This is the rule of divisibility for 4. What is the rule of divisibility for 5 then? A number is divisible by 5 if it ends with a 0 or a 5. What is the rule of divisibility for 6 then? The number must be divisible by 2 and 3 for it to be divisible by 6. Why? Because 2 into 3 is 6. And at the same time, not just that, 2 and 3 are co-primes. That is the reason. Let us look at rule of divisibility for 7. Anybody? Any thought? What is the rule of divisibility for 7? If we don't find a way, then we say divide the entire number that is given by 7 and then verify. But no, there is a rule of divisibility for 7. And that is, first, multiply the units place digit by 2 and subtract the result from the remaining number. Apply the same process continuously until you are left with a small number. If the number that you are left with is divisible by 7, then the given number is said to be divisible by 7. Let us take an example. The number is 254254. 2,54,254. Let us apply the same steps. Take the units place digit, which is 4, multiply it by 2, you get 8. Subtract the 8 from the remaining part of the number, that is 25425 minus 8 will result in 25417. Now the units place is 7. 7 into 2, 14. 2541 minus 14, 2527. Take the units place digit now. 7 into 2, 14. 252 minus 14, 238. Units place doubled. 8 into 2, 16. 23 minus 16, 7. We know that 7 is divisible by 7. Therefore, the given number is said to be divisible by 7. Is that clear? Let us look at rule of divisibility for 8. A number is said to be divisible by 8 if the number formed by the last 3 digits is divisible by 8. Example, if anybody asks 67543289765482, is this divisible by 8? You don't have to divide that entire number by 8 and try and figure out. Instead, take the number formed by the last three digits, which in this case is 832. 832 is divisible by 8, therefore the given number is divisible by 8. What is the rule of divisibility for 9 then? Sum of the digits of the number must be a multiple of 9. Example 75424752. Sum of the digits 7 plus 5, 12, 12 plus 4, 16, 16 plus 2, 18, 18 plus 4, 22, 22 plus 7, 29, 29 plus 5, 34, 34 plus 2, 36. 36 is divisible by 9, therefore the given number is said to be divisible by 9. What is the rule of divisibility for 10 then? The number must end with a 0. What is the rule of divisibility for 11? Difference of the sums of the alternate digits must be divisible by 11. Let us understand the statement with an example. Let us say I take 14641. First take the first set of alternate digits. Take their sum. That is 1 plus 6 plus 1, which is 8. Now take the other set of alternate digits, take their sum, which is 4 plus 4, which is 8. Take the difference of these two sums. It results in 0. We know 0 is divisible by 11. Therefore, the given number is divisible by 11. Next, rule of divisibility for 12. A number is said to be divisible by 12 if it is divisible by both 3 and 4. Why? Because 3 into 4 is 12. Okay. Going by that logic, 6 into 2 is also 12. Why is it that a number divisible by 6 and by 2 need not be divisible by 12 then? Why I am not taking 6 and 2? Because 6 and 2 are not co-primes. What is the meaning of co-prime? The numbers are said to be co-primes if they do not have any other common factor other than 1. A pair of numbers are said to be co-prime if their HCF is 1. If I take 6 and 2, the common factor, the highest common factor is 2. Therefore, I cannot take. Whereas 3 and 4 I can take because 3 into 4 is 12 and at the same time 3 and 4 are co-primes. 3 and 4 are co-primes. So, a number which is divisible by 3 and by 4 is divisible by 12. Now you may be wondering, till what point will this person give the lecture rules of divisibility? I'll be going ahead all the way up till rule of divisibility for 19. Till 19 I'll be explaining and after that I'll give you a method. Okay. Rule of divisibility for 13. Multiply the units place digit by 4 and add the result to the remaining number. Apply the above process continuously until you are left with a small number. If the number you are left with is divisible by 13, then the given number is divisible by 13. Let us take an example. Again, the same example, 254254. Units place digit is 4. Multiply it by 4. We end up with 16. Add this 16 to the remaining number. Please understand, don't think that because we are adding, we are increasing the size of the number. No. In fact, at every step, we are reducing the number by leaving out one of the place. So, 25425 plus 16 results in 25441. Units place is 1. 1 into 4. 4. 2544 plus 4. 2548. 8 into 4. 32. 254 plus 32. 286. 6 into 4. 24. 28 plus 24. 52. Again 2 into 4. 8. 5 plus 8. 13. 13 is divisible by 13, therefore the given number is divisible by 13. Is that clear? Let's move on to rule of divisibility for 14. A number divisible by 2 and 7, because 2 into 7 is 14, 2 and 7 are co-primes. Rule of divisibility for 15. Number which is divisible by 3 and 5 is said to be divisible by 15. Why? Because same reason, 3 into 5, 15, 3 and 5 are co-primes. What is the rule of divisibility for 16 then? See, for 2, the units place digit should have been divisible by 2. For 4, which is 2 squared, the number formed by the last 2 digits. For 2 cube, which is 8, number formed by the last 3 digits. Then for 16, 2 to the power 4. So the number formed by the last 4 digits. If it is divisible by 16, the given number is divisible by 16. Like 432, 657, 689, 6544, 816. If anybody comes and asks, is this divisible by 16? You don't have to divide it by 16. Take the last 4 digits, number formed by the last 4 digits, 4816. Divide 4816 by 16. It is divisible. 4816 is divisible by 16. Therefore, the given number is said to be divisible by 16. Good. What is the rule of divisibility for 17 then? Multiply the units place digit by 5 and subtract the result from the remaining number. Apply the above process continuously until you are left with a small number. If the number you are left with is divisible by 17, then the given number is divisible by 17. Let us take an example and see. 516817. Units place 7 multiplied by 5. We get 35. Subtract 35 from the remaining part of the number. 51681 minus 35 gives me 51646. 6 into 5, 30. 5164 minus 30, 5134. 4 into 5, 20. 513 minus 20, 493. 3 into 5, 15. 49 minus 15, 34. If we are good with tables of 17, then we understand that 34 is divisible by 17. Therefore, the given number is divisible by 17. If not, if we want to proceed further, we can still move ahead. 4 into 5 is 20. 3 minus 20 is minus 17. Minus 17 is divisible by 17. Therefore, the given number is said to be divisible by 17. Is that clear? What is the rule of divisibility for 18 then? A number divisible by 2 and 9 is said to be divisible by 18. Why 2 and 9? 2 into 9 is 18, 2 and 9 are co-primes. What is the rule of divisibility for 19 then? Multiply the units place digit by 2. Add the result to the remaining number. Apply the above process continuously until you are left with a small number. If the number you are left with is divisible by 19, then the given number is divisible by 19. Example, 571938. Units place 8. Multiplied by 2. Get 16. Add this 16 to the remaining number. 57193 plus 16. 57209. 9 into 2, 18. 5720 plus 18. 5738. 8 into 2, 16. 573 plus 16. 589. 9 into 2, 18. 58 plus 18. 76. 6 into 2, 12. 7 plus 12, 19. 19 is divisible by 19, therefore the given number is divisible by 19. Now, some of us might have thought, at some place we multiply by the units place digit by some number, some places we add, some places we subtract from the remaining number. How on earth will I know with what number I need to multiply, where I need to add, where I need to subtract? That is explained with the help of oscillator principle. Now you might ask me, why didn't you give us this principle at the very beginning? Let us understand that the beauty of heaven can be appreciated only when we pass through hell. So, only when we learn the hard way will we be able to appreciate the simpler ways. Let us look at the oscillator principle. But for that, let us see what is happening for rule of divisibility for 7. Multiply by 2, multiply units place digit by 2 and subtract the result from the remaining number. What is the rule of divisibility for 13? Multiply the units place digit by 4 and add to the remaining number. What is the rule of divisibility for 17? Multiply the units place digit by 5 and subtract from the remaining number. What is the rule of divisibility for 19? Multiply the units place digit by 2 and add to the remaining number. Okay. Now, if we look at this, it is all obtained from oscillator principle, which is, if you want to find the rule of divisibility for any number, first find a multiple of that number, which is in the form of 10k plus or minus 1. Multiply the units place digit by k and add to the remaining part if you have done 10k minus 1 and subtract from the remaining part if you have done 10k plus 1. You need to add if there is a minus in 10k minus 1. You need to subtract if it is 10k plus 1. Okay. Now let us take some example over here and see. See, for example, if we take 7, a multiple of 7 which is in this format of 10k plus or minus 1 is 21, which is 10 into 2 plus 1. The value of k is 2. So I multiply by 2 and it is 10 into 2 plus 1. Therefore I subtract over here. For 13, the multiple of 13 which is in this format is 39, which is 10 into 4 minus 1. So we multiply the units place digit by 4, and because we are doing 10k minus 1 here, I will add it to the remaining part. Because of minus, I will add to the remaining part. For 17, 51, 10 into 5 plus 1. So multiply the units place digit by 5 and subtract from the remaining part. For 19, 19 itself, which is 10 into 2 minus 1. So multiply by 2 and add the remaining part. Is this clear? There is a corollary of oscillator principle. But this corollary is applicable only for 7 and 13. And the corollary states, split the number into groups of 3 digits from the right end Start with a plus sign from the first block. Alternate between plus and minus. Perform the operation. If the result is divisible by 7, given number is divisible by 7. If the result is divisible by 13, given number is divisible by 13. For example, if I take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. If I split it, then I split it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then 4, 5, 6, then 1, 2, 3. Start with a plus sign. So plus 1, 2, 3, minus 4, 5, 6, plus 4, 5, 6, minus 1, 2, 3. The result is 0. 0 is divisible by 7. Therefore, the given number is divisible by 7. 0 is divisible by 13. Therefore, the given number is divisible by 13. So, for 7 and 13, we can use this corollary and obtain the result as to whether the given number is divisible by 7 or not, whether the given number is divisible by 13 or not. Fine? There is an added benefit from the rule of divisibility. That is, it helps to find the remainder of the division very quickly. It not only helps to find whether the given number is divisible by another number or not, it also helps to find the remainder. Example, if anybody asks, what is the remainder of 7, 8, 9, 3, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 6 divided by 4? You don't have to divide it by 4. What is the rule of divisibility for 4? Number formed by the last two digits must be divisible by 4. What is the number formed by the last two digits in this case? 86. Divide 86 by 4. What is the remainder? The remainder is 2. Therefore, even the bigger number when divided by 4 gives me a remainder of 2. It's as simple. Is this clear? When we were dealing with odd and even numbers, I stated the last slide I will give a question related to odd and even numbers itself. Let us look at that question. This is a question that appeared in a competitive exam. A dice is marked 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 and 11 on its faces and is thrown 10 times. What is the probability that the sum of the outcomes of the 10 tries is exactly equal to 55? If I had not given the hint, some of us may start thinking, oh, probability is not my cup of tea. Some others may start thinking, I need 55. Every time I roll the dice, I get either a 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 or 11. I am rolling the dice 10 times. Let us take one of the scenarios. Let us say I get 5 as my outcome every time I roll the dice. 5 10 times makes it 50. But I need 55. I will replace one 5 with a 7. The sum becomes 52. I will replace another 5 with a 7. The sum becomes 54. And then we start scratching our head and thinking, we are very close. Is there a way in which I can get 55? This thought is not necessary at all, because this question is entirely based on the concept of odd and even numbers. Every time we roll the dice, the outcome is an odd number. And how many odd numbers do we have? We have 10 odd numbers. What is 10? 10 is an even number. If I take the sum of 10 odd numbers, it is as good as taking a sum of an even number of odd numbers. Sum of an even number of odd numbers will always result in an even number. Therefore, getting the sum of these 10 outcomes as 55 is impossible, because the sum has to always be even in this case. So 55 is impossible. Therefore, the answer is 0 as it is an impossible event. Is that clear? Hope you benefited from this session and enjoyed the session. If you need more such sessions, if you need access to more such questions and videos wherein your understanding of concepts becomes clear, then subscribe to Unacademy. And when you subscribe to Unacademy, here are the benefits that you get. By subscribing, you get access to daily live classes which simulate a classroom method of teaching, wherein you can engage in discussions, ask your doubts, answer the polls, chat with the educator, all of this while the class is going on. You have access to the live tests and quizzes, and the courses are structured, and just one subscription gives you unlimited access to all the educators who are teaching on the platform in that particular category. You also get access to the live classes, some of which are free. You can subscribe to batch course wherein a set of faculty members will take you through the entire syllabus. For some of us, our prime time could be early in the morning or late in the evening. Unacademy gives you the advantage of providing you with a schedule that works for you. Language is not a barrier, and this platform allows you to learn anytime, anywhere. You can interact with your educator, get your doubts cleared, answer the live polls. You can answer the live tests and quizzes. For every test that you attempt, you will be provided with a detailed report and analysis, which helps you figure out your strengths and weaknesses and improve before you attempt the next test. You have access to the learning material and the PDFs. All of this comes with a reasonable subscription fee. Reasoning is at the core. Now, let me provide you a reason as to why it would be beneficial for anyone to subscribe for 24 months. Because if you look at, for 24 months, the subscription fee is 21,000 rupees. And if you use the code APUS, please remember, if you use the code APUS, you get a 10% discount and your effective fee would be 18,900 rupees. Compare that with a 12-month subscription fee, which is 15,750 rupees. Again, 15,750 rupees for 12 months if you use the code APUS. Why do I say that 24-month subscription is real value for money? Because to this 15,750 rupees, if you just add 1 month subscription fee, which is 3,150 rupees, you get access for entire full 24 months. And if you benchmark it against 1 month subscription fee, you effectively get a discount of 75%. You get a effective discount of 75%. And it's very reasonable for the access that you get and the benefits that you get. It's a reasonable fee. Hope to see you soon on Unacademy platform. If you enjoyed this session, do subscribe. And while subscribing, again I iterate, do not forget the code APUS. Hope to see you soon. Thank you.